Alrighty, thanks everyone for joining us today. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what's next for Connect and how you can set yourselves up for success on this journey. Before we kick off, just a disclaimer, we'll be talking a little bit about timelines, roadmaps, things are always subject to change, so forward-looking statements, what we're talking about may change. So before we kick off on what's next, I want to take a little bit of a journey and consider where we've been. Quick show of hands. 2013, we're in Amsterdam. It's Atlas Camp, our sixth Atlas Camp. Who was there? A few people. Awesome. Cool. That's where we first introduced Connect, the beta of Connect. 1 year later, we're in Berlin, Atlas Camp, seventh one, and we GA Connect. Since that time, 2,500 Connect apps have been developed by our community and published on the marketplace. Fast forward, 2019, we're in Vienna. Quick show of hands, who was there? Lots more people, there you go. Cool, this was the first time you guys got a view at Forge. 2 years later, we weren't able to be together, but Forge went GA. Since that time, 1,200 Forge apps have been published on our marketplace, and that continues to grow today. Then, 2023, Copenhagen, who was there? Even more, fantastic, keeps growing. Cool, we introduced Connect on Forge in beta and the opportunity to try migrating Forge, your Connect app to the Forge platform. Since then, we've had almost 100 apps move across to Forge. Before we talk about the future of Connect, I also just want to touch on how things are going today too. Forge is now the preferred platform for new apps. If we look at this chart, top line, new Forge apps over our last year. Bottom line, new Connect apps. Developers are preferring Forge for new app development on our marketplace. Almost 5 apps for every Connect app in our most recent quarter. And reflecting on Connect to Forge, we made it GA in October last year. We are now seeing a massive amount of Connect apps moving across to the Forge platform, adopting new features, Rovo, custom fields, UI modification, and some even going as far, as we heard yesterday, and moving to runs on Atlassian or developing for runs on Atlassian. And that brings us to where we are today. We're talking about the future of Connect. It's probably not a surprise. We published a blog post in early January. For those who have read it, we're planning to end support for Connect at some point in the future. And today we'll be talking a little bit more about what does that mean, how you can be involved in shaping that journey, and how you can plan for success and make sure that your business and your apps are ready to move across. So what do we mean, or where are we? There's 4 key phases on this journey. And we're just in phase 1 right now, and that's consultation. We're asking you for feedback about your Connect apps, about your businesses, about how you utilize and build your apps, and that's helping us shape those next steps. Each phase that comes after this will have a subsequent deprecation period, and we plan to announce these proactively. So in the coming months, you'll see an announcement about when we think these will be and what capabilities will come with them. However, each one will also have its own deprecation period. That first phase is new Forge apps only. This means that if you're building an app for our marketplace, you should be focusing on building that app on Forge. We will not allow new apps from Connect to be published to our marketplace. Following this, we'll start to see a consolidation towards Forge for existing and maintained apps on our marketplace as well. So what this means is if you have a Connect app today, you'll have to move it to Forge with Connect modules, and that will enable you to continue delivering updates to your customers. And then finally, we move to a point at which Connect enters end of support. I do want to recap quickly. Connect end of support does not mean that Connect just disappears. It's end of support. It's going to be a gradual journey, and I'll talk about that. First and foremost, we're not going to be addressing every bug. We know that there's bugs. We know that bugs come along. It's part of development and growth within the platform. Once Connect enters end of support, we will only be looking at addressing critical or security-related bugs on the platform. Any minor bugs, any existing bugs that are minor, will not be addressed or resolved. Similar to this, we're going to be focusing on supporting Forge and our Forge platform and people developing on Forge. You'll likely see that requests related to Connect modules on Forge will receive a lower priority and may not have an associated SLO for response, which enables us to respond faster to any requests or problems that people have on the Forge platform. Connect will also no longer evolve with our products. What that means is, as our products continue to grow, evolve, change, Connect support may be deprecated as Forge support is persisted along with that product. And finally, most important part, you could keep using Connect if you wish to, but it will be at your own risk. We will likely see deprecations across the product as it evolves, as modules become unavailable, and you will be chasing those. So being proactive and moving to Forge and adopting those Forge capabilities is going to set you and your businesses up for success early. As we noted as well, your feedback is really critical on this journey. It's a QR code, that's the feedback form. It's also in the blog post, so you can jump on. We've got it upstairs at the booth as well. We've already performed a really deep analysis of Connect modules, Forge modules, how they work, and the differences between them. However, there's unique ways in which you've built your app, in which you deliver your app, in which your front end works, that may not be as obvious or apparent to us. And learning about these and the feedback that you've provided is helping us shape our roadmap and understand what we need to deliver on the Forge platform to make it possible to bring your Connect apps across. As we noted, we're also looking at shaping those prerequisites. So your feedback about capabilities that you require are helping us understand how that aligns to all of those subsequent phases. Now, one key point here as well is that we're not looking to just deliver parity. When we talk about use cases, we talk about the ability to deliver a similar outcome. So you may find that things will change a little bit. You may have a different way that modules will launch, but the use cases and the ability to deliver use cases should be similar. Now, I want to just kind of talk about closing the gap and how far Forge has come in just the last few quarters as well. We know that there's been lots of requests since Atlas Camp in Copenhagen about capabilities that you required on the Forge platform to enable you to deliver your apps and bring it across. So I just wanted to recap for those of you who haven't been following our changelog, there's been a ton of progress. For those of you using macros, we've got custom editors, we've got body macros, and we've got custom UI within inline macros. We now support the email address API within Forge from Forge Remote and Forge Functions. We have web item equivalents. So we're not having web items in Forge, but we've got actual first-class modules for things like the new issue navigator, for Jira boards, for Jira sprints, for personal pages. So you can build with confidence, knowing that it's not just a render point and a web item, it's a fully dedicated module within the Forge platform. We've also provided time tracking provider support on Forge for any time tracking apps. As you heard yesterday, data residency pinning is now available in preview. So if you're supporting customers with that, you can come to the Forge platform as well. We've made significant strides with Jira product events. We've got deletion events, and we've got events for the majority of events and webhooks that you could subscribe to on the Connect platform. And very recently, we've also enabled display conditions. So you can utilize display conditions similar to how you use them on Connect across your modules on the Jira platform. And for those of you who have modules that store data, macros, webhooks, dashboard items, you can bring those across to the Forge platform with confidence as we migrate that data in the background for you and enable you to consume it within Forge. So there's no extra work involved in making sure that customer data is persisted. And we've got a little bit of a way to go as well. There's things that we're continuing to work on and deliver. We know that offline user impersonation is really important to some of the use cases that you deliver within your apps today. and we're working on bringing offline user impersonation to both Forge functions and remotes, so you can continue to deliver those use cases. We support pin-in for data residency, but we know that customers also need migrations, and that's coming along as well. For those of you with macros, auto-conversion is a really important circumstance to ensure that the customer experience is seamless when pasting URLs and delivering your macros. We understand this, and we're looking to bring that across to the Forge platform with some improved enhancements to make it possible to have additional macros across the same URL as well. UI navigation methods will make it easier to ensure that your Forge platform can navigate between pages without having to construct URLs themselves, so you can focus less on the nitty-gritty things and focus more on building experiences for customers. We also touched on these for Jira. They come into Confluence too. We've got display conditions. We've got product events. We've also heard about anonymous users for Jira, guest users, etc., and we're working towards bringing those to the Forge platform. We understand there are also additional modules that we don't support just yet, global permissions, project permissions, and we're working towards bringing those to Forge soon. So if you're utilizing those, you'll be able to adopt those modules and bring them across. I'm going to hand over to Carol. We've talked a little bit about where we're going and how we can get there. Carol's going to talk about how you can set yourselves up for success.
Thanks, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm Carol, and I'm a program manager in Ecosystem. Now, I've been working on the Connect to Forge migration program of work in Atlassian. Now, you've heard a lot of information about migrating your Connect app to Forge, not just in today's session, but also throughout yesterday. It was a common thread in many of the presentations. Now, I'm here to guide you through a simplified project management process to support key decision-making, to help you prioritize tasks, and to track progress, offering a structured approach to making this migration as smooth as possible. What you'll see here is the 5 common stages of any project. What I want to do over the next few slides is look at this under a Connect to Forge migration lens. So we'll explore each step from defining the project vision, clarifying scope and timing, executing the plan, tracking the performance, and then finally reflecting on the process. So let's start with project initiation. And you start from a blank page. This stage is all about stepping back and assessing your app portfolio from a broad perspective to determine how many apps you want to migrate and which ones you want to choose to do first. Now, this is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and different partners are going to assess their apps in different ways. Several factors are going to influence your assessment and the level of investment that you're going to choose to make. What I have done for this example is choose 2 common factors that most of you will analyze during this assessment, and that is based on your app's complexity and your app's value. Let's take the x-axis first, the complexity. You want to evaluate each one of your apps in your portfolio. So some of you might have 5 apps, 20 apps, 50 apps, and look at the complexity of it. So it might include your dependencies and integrations, consider the number of extension points that you have, and the complexity of the backend service. Now, it's safe to assume that the more complex apps and the higher up this scale that they are, the more effort it will take to migrate those apps. So that will be a factor whether you want to prioritize first. Now, let's move on to the y-axis where you see the value. You should consider the business impact and the revenue generated for each app, and that might inform your decision about the priority in the migration process. So what you want to do is consider all of your Connect apps from your portfolio and plot them here on this matrix. These green squares represent the apps in your portfolio. On this basic way of evaluating, it would be a good approach to prioritize the high-value, low-complexity apps for your Connect to Forge migration. So you can see here mostly on this top left corner. A strategy which we've seen in the past few months has been to choose your least complex app, even if it is considered low value, as a starting point. Now, this is a really good way to test the process and use it as a learning experience to inform your decisions. Now, I did say that there's many ways to do this, and another approach, instead of looking at the current value and complexity, you may want to look at the potential value of your app. And you may want to look at the opportunity that it presents from a strategic point of view. So consider how an app fits into future product plans or platform enhancements that will be available only in Forge. So for example, Rovo. Perhaps you want to take advantage of that and make your selection based from a strategic alignment with your goals. Now, if you do that, perhaps that app falls outside of that quadrant. And this is a perfectly good approach if you want to take that, because moving from Connect to Forge can be done in an incremental approach. And so you can upgrade your Connect app to Forge today with that method. Now, at this stage, you'll have decided the apps in your portfolio that you want to prioritize and take on this journey. And we've moved on to project planning. In this phase, what you want to do is transition from high-level concepts to actionable plans for each app. What you want to do for each app is conduct a thorough analysis of the apps that you've selected. Now, all apps, like we've said, can adopt the Forge manifest, at which point they're considered a Forge app. But you need to undertake Forge module analysis to determine the extent of the migration into Forge. So, what does that look like? The process for analysis will include identifying your Connect modules, mapping them to their Forge equivalents, and then reviewing the module behavior. Because while Forge modules are designed to support equivalent use cases, they may not function exactly as their Connect counterparts. Now, at this point, you'll also have to make a couple of key decisions around things like storage, UI, and dev loop options. Your storage options will include using Forge-hosted storage capabilities that let you store data in your app installation, or using a Forge remote to securely interact with external services outside of the Atlassian network. Note that your decision about how you store data in your Forge app will impact your app's eligibility for a runs on Atlassian Marketplace badge, which is something that Karen and Aggie discussed yesterday in that presentation. Now, the next component in planning is looking at the timing of your project. What this means is defining your milestones and your rollout plan. Like I said, adopting Forge from Connect can be approached in various ways. Now, you might opt for an incremental journey, replacing modules over time, or you can do a one-time change by replacing all Connect modules in a new version of your app. There's no right or wrong approach. The best choice depends on several factors, such as module availability, app complexity, and of course, we understand that partners don't have unlimited capacity, so you'll have to have some practical considerations like your resource availability or what other priorities that you have on your roadmap. Now, moving on to the project execution phase. This is where the detailed planning really transforms into action as your team begins implementing the project plan. This is the hands-on stage where our Connect to Forge strategy is put into motion and the engineering tasks are driven forward. This plan is going to look a little bit different for each app, depending on what options you have chosen for your migration, like what modules you want to replace, the timing of the project, and if you're going to do an incremental rollout. But all projects are going to follow the basic flow from assessment to adopting Forge from Connect by converting the Connect descriptor to the Forge manifest, and then most apps will go on to replacing Connect modules or adopting the new capabilities in Forge. The project monitoring phase is all about keeping a close eye on your project as it progresses to ensure that it stays on track. If you're doing an incremental migration, you may want to track the module availability, which can be seen in our Connect equivalence roadmap. You may have identified some blockers, in which case you can monitor your Forge tickets to see when those use cases get unblocked. And with new functionality being built all of the time in Forge, you may want to monitor the Forge roadmap to look for those new opportunities. Now, that's a lot of information that I shared with you. I want to just take a step back and look at a practical example of what this would actually look like in real life. So if I was a partner and I was doing this, I want to show you how I would report and track on the overall progress of a migration. Now, this is just a pretty simple template on Confluence, and I'm going to walk through it in a second. But where you're going to really see the impact of this, if you've got a number of apps in your portfolio that are going through this migration process, it might be pretty easy to track one app through this process and understand exactly where it is. But if you've got 10, 20 apps, and they're all at different stages, it's really handy to have a page like this tracking the plan and the status so you can share it with other people. So I'm a partner and I have an app called App A, which, I spent a lot of time thinking about my fictional app name. And I am migrating it from Connect to Forge. Now, I've added some basic information here, like app name, the app ID, and the link to Marketplace. I'm also going to outline exactly what is in scope, so the North Star for my project. What exactly is the goals and objectives? You can also see that I flagged ROA in scope, which means I want this app to be eligible for runs on Atlassian, and that is my North Star for this project. I've identified 4 different modules for App A, and you can see that I've mapped them from their Connect modules to their Forge modules. Now, I've also identified the resource plan for my project. So you may want to tag the team that is actually going to be implementing it, like the engineering team, but you might also want to identify Atlassian TPMs or your own leadership team so that they can track the status of this project. Now you can see the timeline. So I have identified for App A, I'm going to do an incremental approach to my rollout. And the key dates and milestones are outlined here. So I'm going to do my app assessment, going to convert to Forge, and then I've got it broken down into a couple of different milestones. Throughout the assessment and the execution, you may identify some blockers or some nice-to-have features on the roadmap that are coming up. And I've got them all listed here. You can see for App A, I've got 3 items here. They're all resolved. I'm waiting on 1. For the Forge roadmap, you can see I've got Forge data residency, which was blocking me. You can see that's now delivered. And the next one I'm waiting on is user impersonation. The next section I've got is just a general project admin section. So where is the project being discussed? Where is the work being tracked? Things like your Slack channel, your Jira project, and also your Atlas ticket. So for each app that is going through their migration process, I would have an Atlas ticket and report on it weekly. Then I've got my JPD plan and all of my different milestones and my backlog. Like I said, this is going to be a little bit different for every app, but this is the general way that I would probably run a project and track tasks. And now, because I'm doing an incremental rollout, I can come back to this page at any time, 3, 6 months down the path, easily see where it is, all of the Forge tickets that I'm tracking, and move on to the next phase. Finally, we're at the project closer phase, but you're not done yet. Now, while the app may have been successfully migrated, this phase is crucial for laying the groundwork for future success. With each app that you migrate, the learning curve will diminish, and subsequent migrations will become easier and faster as you become more familiar with the dev loop. Reflect on what was learned during the migration and identify areas for improvement. Consider what could be done differently for the next app. And like Sean has already talked about, please do provide feedback to Atlassian and discuss insights with your TPM. Every partner who tests the migration path with their app, shares feedback, contributes to ensuring the smooth transition of the entire ecosystem. Now, I hope I've given you a few tips on how to start on this process and a bit of a framework for how you can track and report on this. So I will now hand back over to Sean to wrap us up.
Cheers. So, recapping, what now? What next? Well, I mean, we're all here at Atlas Camp. We've been talking for the last day and a bit about adopting Forge from Connect, adopting Forge, tons of Forge. We've shared the process with you now on how you can share key gaps and opportunities, and as we mentioned, your feedback's really important. But the way you get there is to try it, because you won't know what you don't know. So for those at the workshop, try the process, get onto Forge, work with our teams to understand how to adopt it and go as far as you can, and share that feedback as you're going through that process. Finally, plan for success. Start early, start working through that, and understand how this fits in your roadmap over the coming quarters so that you can get ahead rather than being at the tail end and having to race to get your app to Forge. Otherwise, thank you for listening. And we have a booth upstairs as well. Come have a chat to us. We've got engineers who are keen to help you and keen to answer any questions that you have too.